Welcome to a tutorial from MC Knitting Adventures. My name's Colleen, and in today's tutorial we're going to learn how to make a tea towel topper. These make great hostess gifts, great Christmas gifts, gifts for any season. You just have to change out what kind of tea towel you use and they'll work great. The first thing we have to do is gather all the things that we need. Now I have this thing about gnomes, and so I happened to be in Walmart and I found this. Now I realize it's a little Christmassy, but it's still going to show you how to do it because it's just a Christmas tree. It's going to be okay. So I really like that one. So first of all, you're going to need a tea towel. Then you're going to need some big scissors, and that's going to help you cut the tea towel in half. So I'm going to need that. Then we're going to have something to make holes in the tea towel top. So there's two options. Option one is you use a knitting needle. Now you have to make sure it's sharp. This one will definitely go through, so that's option one. Now I knew I was going to be making a number of these, so I went to Lowe's, which is a hardware store, and I found this awl. And if you take a look, it's got a very sharp point. In fact, I have injured myself with this, so you have to be really careful using the awl, but that will help make the holes that we need to put the crochet hook through. Speaking of crochet hook, now I have a size 4. This is a clover hook, and I really, really like these ones. The handle's nice and ergonomic, so that's fantastic. We're going to need a sewing needle to put the button on when the time comes. We're going to need some small scissors to deal with that. Now, I have two different kinds of crochet cotton or crafting cotton. One is Suds, and it's by Estelle Yarns. So this is nice. And the other one is, the one that I use most often is the Bernat Handicrafter. But what I found was this gray was just a little bit too dark. I think this color goes better. So when you're trying to decide, hold the ball of yarn up there and that will help out. So this one I'm going to put away, and this is the one that I'm going to use for this one. Now, as far as the last thing I need is a button. And usually I use a 3/4 inch button. Sometimes it's a 7/8 inch button. And oftentimes I'll just have on hand some that are clear, some that are white, some gray, some black. And the reason for that is lots of times I don't know what button I'm going to use until the thing's done. So if you take a look at this one that I did, it's got this lovely gray stripe. I used white at the top, and then I put a nice gray button on it. So it's all kinds of possibilities, and it's whatever's going to make you happy when you do that. So those are the tools that we need, and next we've got to get over to sewing machine. Most tea towels, when you purchase them, they look like this. Oftentimes there is something on this side and something on this side. In this tea towel there's not, but that doesn't mean I can't use that. So sometimes you'll make one for a gift and keep one for yourself because they're very handy in the kitchen. So the first thing I need to do is open this up, and there's two options. Option one is you measure how long the tea towel is and then measure halfway across. You can do that, but there's going to be a lot of work done on this. So I'm just going to fold it in half, give it a bit of a shake, fold it in half, and then I'm going to take the fold and do a little bit of hand pressing with it, and then I'm just going to pull it tight and cut along the edge. I've done this a lot, it works great, but if you're a little leery of it, then you can actually measure if you'd like. So I just keep my hand flat because it kind of keeps the edges even. And that way you can kind of pull the scissor away from it, which makes it for a sharper fold. There we go. So now there is the gnome, which is for me because I love it. And then this is a plain one that will just be used. Okay. So now we've got two things to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sewing machine to work on this one, and then I'm going to use a serger because I happen to have one for the gnome one. You can see that this edge is raw, and so what I want to do is go over it so that it's not going to fray and it's not going to fall apart. So I'm going to use my sewing machine on this piece and just use a zigzag and go all the way over. If If you don't have a sewing machine, you can just hand sew it. Some people would use a blanket stitch, or you can just whip stitch it across. It's just so that it won't fray. So let's take a look at the sewing machine, and here we go. I'm just going to use a wide zigzag. So we'll get started at the edge, and we just want to go over that edge. And sometimes it takes a little while to get it just where you want it. And I'm going to go back, stitch a little bit, and then I'm going to keep going back across. You just want to take that edge and finish it off. So we get to the end, we do a little back stitching, and then we come back over. Perfect. Edge is now going to be okay, and I'll be able to continue on with that. So that's the first one. So this is my serger. It is very old. It's probably about 30 years old, but it's still working. And so I'm really happy with that. So what I'm going to do, this does basically a zigzag and also runs a couple of extra lines of stitching, and it just is a little bit more secure than the zigzag. So here we go. The nice thing about the serger, it leaves a really clean edge. And the other thing it will do is it takes off any little bits. So you can see that it's chopped off just a little bit of the edges, and that's okay. I didn't need to take too much off. So the edges are clean, whether I use the zigzag on my sewing machine, whether I use the serger. Once again, you can always hand stitch it. So now we actually get to start working on the towel itself. When you use the serger, you end up with this lovely long end, which we need to weave in. So I'm just going to cut it with enough to weave in, and then I'm going to flip it to the wrong side. This is going to be covered, so I'm not worried so much about it, but I'm just going to use a darning needle, and then I'm going to weave this in on those loops. So I'm just going to keep going in just a little bit across, pull it tight, and then there you can see. So it's woven in, and I'll cut it and then do the same on the other side. I'm using a 4mm hook, size G, and so I have to make sure that I can get it through this. I'm going to go right underneath where that stitching is, and so I'm going to use an awl and start in, and then that edge is going to help me protect it. So here's the awl. It is very sharp. You do have to be careful. So I'm going to start right at the very edge, and I poke it through, to be honest with you, until I feel it with my finger, and then give it a little bit of a twisty turn. Because as soon as I do that, I know my crochet hook's going to go through. Now usually I try and do about 3 or 4 in a row. You can see it collapses the other holes, so you don't want to go do all the holes all the way across. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And for now, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to make a slip knot. So go around my finger, come back behind it, pull that through. There we go. I've put the slip knot on my crochet hook, and now I'm just going to go through, and in every hole I'm going to do a single crochet. So to do a single crochet, I need to grab the yarn, pull it through. The first one's always the hardest. And then I'm going to grab and pull through the 2. It's up to you what you want to do. Sometimes I'll put a second one in there, but that one's pretty tight. So I'm going to go back through the next hole and make a single crochet. And then there we go. And then the next one into the hole, grab the yarn, single crochet, and then go across. So as I said, I'm doing about 5 stitches before I start making more holes. Now the magic question is, how many holes do you do across? I don't know the answer. It'll depend. You can't put the hole too close, because if you do that, it's going to break through. So I think we're looking at about 1/8 of an inch. The holes are apart, but as I said, if you make them too close together, they'll run together, and then you're going to have to go back and redo the edge, because otherwise it won't work. And I've had that happen, so don't feel badly if it happens. You just have to be careful when you're doing it. So I'm going to make 5 more holes. So there's a stitch, about 1/8 of an inch, make a hole. About 1/8 of an inch, make a hole. About 1/8 of an inch, make a hole. You can see this works really well. This tea towel isn't too bad as far as how hard it is to push through. Some of them are a little thicker. So there's the holes. Some tea towels are a little thicker, so I'm back through. Now, some of you will notice that I am holding my crochet hook like this. Some people are taught to hold it like a pencil. It was my grandmother that taught me to crochet, and I was just holding it like that. So I'm going to do that, but it's however you feel more comfortable. So in the hole, grab the yarn, and then finish my single crochet. In the hole, grab the yarn, and then back through 2. And through the hole, back through 2. And I'm just going to move my yarn because it should be on my left-hand side to make my life easier. There it is, through the hole, and make the stitch. And once again, don't worry about how many. We're going to juggle this through the hole, and do that, through the hole, and do that. Okay, I am really liking how this cotton is working up. I think it's going to make a really nice topper to this tea towel. So I'm going to work my way across, and when I get to the end, I'm going to show you what we do next. I have 3 holes left, and I made the last hole fairly large because I'm going to try and get 2 single crochets in there. I just find it covers the end a little nicer. So in I go. So there's one. There's the second one. Now, this doesn't always work, but we're going to give it a shot. So here's going to be the first one. And then, as I said, I'm going to try and get a second one in there if I can. And it's just going to cover the end. Yep, I like that better. Okay, so I've got the whole row across. And now what I have to do is go back. And what I do is I'm going to chain 2. So 1, 2, and then I turn my work. So I'm going on the way back. I'm going to skip that first stitch because this chain 2 is going to count, and I'm going to do a double crochet in each of the single crochets. So to do that, you wrap the yarn around your hook, put it in through the hole, pull through once, pull through 2, and then pull through 2. So let's try that again. Yarn over, stick it in the top, come back through. So now I've got 3 loops on my stitch. On my hook, I go 1 and then 2. One more time, around, through, there it is. So there's my 3 pieces of yarn, and I go through the first 2 and I go through the last 2. So I'm going to keep going all the way across, and then once I turn again, you're going to see what happens next. I finished my row of double crochets. I put 1 in the last stitch. Now I'm going to chain 2. So 1, 2, and then turn my work. All right, so the work is turned. Now remember, I haven't counted these stitches. I don't know how many there are, but this is when we get to play a little, and it's fine. So I don't want you to stress about it. It's going to be okay. So the idea with this is I'm going to put a double crochet in every other one. So normally I would be putting a double crochet there, and I'm going to miss it. So I'm going to put a double crochet in the next one. There's my double crochet. So you can see I've left a little hole on purpose. And then I'm going to skip this one, and then double crochet in that one. And then I'm going to skip one, double crochet in the next one, skip one, double crochet in the next one. So one more time. I'm just going to point to it. So I'm going to miss this one, and I go into this one, and once again double crochet as you wrap the yarn around, put it through the hole, bring it up. So now there's 3 bars across, and go through the first 2 and go through the last 2. Important to note, I'm not doing a single crochet in between because what I'm trying to do is make this narrow. So you can see that's exactly what it's starting to do. So it looks a little bit lacy, which is just fine, but I'm decreasing the number of stitches across. Now, I don't know what's going to happen when I get to the other end, so I'm going to keep working this, and then when I get to the end, we'll take a look. I'm close to the end. Now, what will happen is that would be one, that would be one, and then there's still this one to deal with. And that's okay, because I'm going to actually do a stitch in there. So I've got 1, 2, 3 more stitches, but we're not going to worry about it because at some point in time, we just have to juggle the numbers. If you think about it, we've cut the number of stitches in half. My next pass, I'm going to do a double crochet in each of these double crochets. So it will be another one that's a solid line, just like the one before this one. So let me just show you what's going to happen. So I'm going to put 1 in here. I'm going to put 1 in here. And then I have to go into the top of that chain 2. And it's okay. Nobody's going to come and take a look and see what did you do. So now that's that. I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to turn my work. And now in every single crochet, pardon me, in every double crochet, I'm going to put a double crochet. So there's 1, and then I double crochet in that one. And then I move across, double crochet in that one. And then I'm just going to do that all the way across. And then when we get to the end, we'll talk about what comes next. Almost to the end, double crochet in that one. Then I'm going into the top of that chain 2 stitch. So through that, grab the yarn. I've got 3 bars of yarn there, through the first 2, through the next, and then I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work. All right, so we did a solid, an open, a solid. So now we're going to do an open again, which means we're going to miss every other stitch. So I'm not going to double crochet in there. I'm going to double crochet in the next one. So once again, we're reducing the number of stitches in half. So I'm going to miss this one and double crochet there. So stick it through, bring it up, and then through 2, through 2. No chaining in between anything. So I miss one, into the next one, double crochet, miss one, down, grab the loop, through the first 2, through the next 2. So I'm going to keep going through that. You can see that we're decreasing, and you'll see it even more when I get to the end. Sometimes life works out nicely, so I'm going to skip one, top of the chain 2. So it's perfect, okay? I've done every other one and the number is working great. If it doesn't, then do what we did the last time, put 1 there and 1 there, and then it's going to work its way out where there's a way to figure it out once we get closer to the end. So we're going to do that, chain 2, turn your work, and then you're going to go back solid. We have a solid row and then an open work, solid row, open work, solid row. Now let's count stitches. 1, 2, 3, 19, 20. So with 20, once I do every other stitch, then I'm going to have 10. 10's a good number. If you do every other stitch and you have 12, that's a good number. You want to have an even number left, and the reason for that is because when you sew the button on, you want 2 center stitches, so it needs to be an even number. I usually use 10. It's going to work perfectly here. Sometimes I have to do a little bit of juggling, whether I put an extra stitch in, whether I take an extra stitch out. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do every other stitch this way, and then I'm going to do every stitch back. And that will show you that we're down to 10. Skip a stitch, double crochet. The one good thing about this project, you get really good at double crochet. So we're going to skip a stitch, yarn over, put it through the top, come back, and then yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the last 2. I'm going to do every other stitch all the way across. I'm going to chain 2, turn my work, and then I'm going to do a double crochet in every double crochet that there is, and then we're going to take a look at what we've got. Because you have a stitch at each end, then having my 20 didn't work out evenly, and that's okay, because actually it's good because I get a chance to show you what's going to go on. So if I skip one, I get to this, and then that's going to be left all by itself. Option 1 is you just don't worry about it, and then you're done. I'm going to fill that in, and then I'm going to show you what I do on the next round, and you'll see that it kind of hides it a little nicer. So I'm going to skip a stitch, put a double crochet in there, and then I'm just going to put a double crochet in the top of that chain 2. Now I have one too many stitches, so let me show you what happens. I'm going to chain 2. Now the rule is that in this way I am going to be doing a double crochet in every double crochet, but I need to decrease by 1. So I'm going to avoid this one. I don't need to have it there, so I'm going to move 1 and just skip it. And it doesn't look that bad that I've missed it. If I'd done it earlier, it might have sloped too much. So I'm just going to do this all the way across, double crochet. So let's count them up. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there we are, and then one more is 10. So as I mentioned, this is that magic number that needs to be even. So I now have 10 because I just kind of decreased 1 at one side. If you had 12, you could decrease 1 on each side to even it out, no problem. And now what I need you to do is you're just going to do double crochets in each double crochet all the way across, and you're going to do enough rows that you have enough to flip it over. So depending on what kind of crochet cotton you're using, sometimes it's 10 rows, sometimes it's 11 rows. This actually is beautiful stuff. I've never used this Suds by Estelle, and I might have to do 12. But I'm just going to keep doing a double crochets, no more decreasing, double crochets all the way across, and then when I get ready to finish off, I'll show you what I do. This is the first row where I've just been doing plain double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's what I usually do when I'm using Handicrafter. How you can do something to figure out, I've just got this knitting needle. You can use a dowel if you want. I just want to make sure it's going to actually go to your stove or your fridge to see. So I'm going to sew a button here, and it will be the second part here. So I'm just going to bring that to there. You can see it. It's going to be just fine. So I think we're in the right spot. I don't need to do any more. If you're finding that your crochet is a little tighter, or maybe it's looser and you've got way too much, then you can take a row off. The nice thing about crochet, it doesn't take too long. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to cut my yarn, leave myself a little bit of a tail to weave in, and I am just going to grab it, pull it through, pull it tight, and then we're going to talk about weaving in ends. Now, when we're looking at this, and I want to weave this end in, understand that this is going to flip this way. So when you're seeing it, that's the side they're going to see. So I don't want to weave the end in over here. Don't want to weave it in there. So I'm actually, it looks like the right side, but I'm going to weave it in here. So I'm going to go through and do that. So I'm going to need to have a darning needle. And I'm just going to put that in there. Now, there's not going to be lots of pulls and tugs on this. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to do what I normally do, is I'm going to go in there and pull through. There we go. And then I'm going to come down and go through all the double crochets. So I'm going to go through a double crochet here, through these double crochet. There it is. Give it a little bit of a tug, not too much. You don't want it to push it in too much. Then I'm going to go through the next one, and then I'm going to go through the next one. Okay, now I don't want this to be in as much, so I'm just going to give it a little pull back. That's good. And then all I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to come back and go back through, but I'm going to jump over just one leg. And that's going to give it another way to go in. So I'm going to turn my work over and put it there for you. So I'm going to avoid that. And I'm just going to go back through all of that. Not quite to the end because we don't want it to show through, but I'll pull. And I'm going to pull, but not too snug. So you can see I've hidden it, and so it looks good. And then we'll just cut our tail. So that's that one. Now the other thing that I have to weave in is this one right here. And the nice thing about that is I can go right into all these double crochets. Same thing that I just did, but I don't have to come down at all. So thread the needle, and here I go. So I'm going to go through and through, and you want to pull but not too tight, and then let's go through and through and pull. And I think I'm going to go through one more where I go through both parts, and then I'm going to turn it over, and when I come back I'm going to just skip this one, just going to make it so it doesn't slip through. Pull all the way through, not quite to the end because you don't want the end to pop out. Give it a tug, loosen it up, and there we are. So we've done the hardest part. There is all our crochet work done. And now I have to figure out where I'm going to put the button. To put the button, I was careful that I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's an even number. If you have 12, there's no problem. But because it's even, there's going to be 2 parts that are going to hold the button for me. And so that's going to make it nice and strong. Now, I didn't crochet a buttonhole, but because of the double crochets, I can just pull them across. So that's no problem. So I have to decide on my button, and I wanted to wait until I was done to see what we could do. So now let's just put that like it's going to be. There's that option. Kind of like that. I think the black is too harsh. I think the white blends in a little much. So I think I'm going to use the gray button. And that's what I'm going to do. Now, I use thread because I want to, the crochet cotton's a little thick. So I'm just going to use thread. I've got 2 holes. One hole's going to be above that bar. The other hole's going to be about that bar. So I'm just going to stitch the button in there. One thing I would suggest is doubling up your thread. Now I'm going to need some gray thread, so I'll be right back. I've threaded my gray thread through the needle. I've put a knot at the end, and the reason why I want to show you this is because that knot is so tiny it will probably come right up through the crochet cotton. So there's a little trick to make your life a little bit easier, and I'm just going to show you how that works. So we've decided it's the 2 middle bars. So I'm going to come up through one of these bars. I just have to make sure I'm grabbing some of the yarn. I'm going to put the button on. I'm going to come up, but I'm not going to pull it all the way. Then I'm going to come back through this hole of the button. And then what I want to do is go through the other bar. So I'm through the other bar. Now here's where I make my life work well. So I'm going to pull this through, but I want to show you the trick. So far it looks okay, but I haven't pulled anything super tight yet. And let me flip this over so you can see what I'm going to do. So there is the part with the needle. There is the part with the knot. I'm going to open this up and I'm going to put my needle through it and I'm going to grab that. So what I have done, now I can pull tight. It's not going to come through at all because it's kind of looped on itself. So now I can flip back over, make sure I haven't twisted it. So it depends whether you want your holes up and down like that. I prefer that. So now I'm going to come back up through this, bar. Remember, we've got 2 bars because we've got 2 holes. And I'm going to go through that one. Give it a snug pull. And then I'm going to go down through that. Make sure I'm hitting the other bar, which I am. Pull it tight. Make sure there's not any loops not looking snug. So I'm going to do that another 2 or 3 times, and then we'll come back and see how we fasten things off. I've gone through the button about 4 or 5 times, and now all I need to do is make a couple of knots. So I'm going to loop my thread around. I'm going to catch a few of the pieces of the crochet cotton. And you have to be careful that you just get enough, because if it goes too far away, that's better. Okay, so the thread itself has come over that needle, which is going to make me have a little bit of a knot. So I'm going to pull that up and make it snug. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. So I'm going to make a knot, put my needle through it. There it is. That's nice. And pull it tight. So that button is going to hold for sure. I'm going to cut this thread. And now we're going to flip it over and make that button work. So there's the hole. Sometimes what I need to do is put my finger through it just before I try and stick a button through, so that I make sure the button can go through no problem, which it can. So let's take a look at what this looks like. And if you're giving these away, it's kind of nice to fold them like that. Let's take a look at the whole picture though. So there's what we have. We have the lovely gnomes that I like so much, and we have the towel topper, so I can put this on my stove or my fridge, and then it's great to wipe your hands on or just have for decoration. There's your towel topper, all done, ready to be gifted, ready to be used by yourself. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. If you like what you're seeing, give me a thumbs up, comment down below. If you have any questions, comment as well. And subscribe, because that helps our channel. So until next time, you take care.